The day I found the old letters in my foster father's drawer, my world shattered. There, in black and white, was proof that the man who'd raised me with Bible verses and church sermons had once loved another man with all his heart. My hands trembled as I read the faded words, each line hitting me like a punch to the gut. My dearest love. It started, signed in my dad's handwriting. How could this be? Pastor Edward Harlan, the pillar of our small-town church in central Illinois, hiding a secret like this for decades? I had always tried to live the normal life he wanted for me. At 25, I was Declan Harlan, working a steady marketing job in Chicago, dating girls I didn't really feel anything for, and showing up for Sunday services without fail. It was all for him, for the church, for the only family I had since my biological parents left me at 10. Dad never spoke much about his past, just that he had dedicated his life to God after some wild years. I always assumed it meant partying or bad choices, not this raw confession of love between two men. That evening I sat on the edge of my old bed in the house I grew up in, the letters spread out like evidence at a trial. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock in the hallway. Dad was at a church planning meeting, and the familiar smell of pine cleaner hung in the air, the same one my late foster mom used every Saturday. My stomach twisted. All those sermons about the sins of the flesh, about how a man should love a woman the way God intended, suddenly felt like theater. Was everything a lie? And why did reading these words make my own chest tighten with something I had spent years burying? I had always pushed those feelings down hard. The way my eyes lingered on the guys in the gym during college, the flutter in my stomach whenever my coworker Justin smiled at me across the conference table. Justin, with his easy laugh, kind brown eyes, and the way he remembered little things like my coffee order, was supposed to be just a friend. I had even forced myself on 3 dates with Sarah from accounting last month to prove I was normal. Each awkward kiss felt like I was reading lines from a script that didn't belong to me. Now this. The letters spoke of secret weekend trips to Chicago, of stolen moments in the city where no one knew them, of a love so deep it hurt to hide. One page mentioned a night at a quiet cafe where they talked about running away together before the church pulled Dad back. Then the letters stopped. What happened? Did he choose faith over happiness? And if he did, why had he spent every day of my life pushing me down the same path? I stuffed the letters back into the drawer, but not before slipping one into my jacket pocket. My mind raced as I drove the 2 hours back to my apartment in the city. Highway lights blurred past the windshield while questions hammered inside my head. Was I like him? Was that why no woman had ever made me feel alive? The thought terrified me more than anything. I had spent years being the perfect son, the straight son who would carry on the family name, maybe even enter the ministry one day. Now it all felt like a carefully built house of cards. When I finally reached my apartment, I poured a glass of whiskey and stared at the single letter again. The words were so honest they burned. I miss the way you look at me, the way your hand feels in mine when no one is watching. I crumpled the paper and threw it across the room, but it didn't help. Sleep wouldn't come. By morning I had a pounding headache and one clear decision. I had to talk to Dad. He was the only family I had left, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who sat by my bed praying when I had pneumonia at 14. The thought of confronting him made my hands shake, but the secret was already out, and it was changing everything inside me. I drove back that weekend, the letter burning a hole in my glove box. Dad was in the garden, tending his roses the way he always did on Saturday mornings, humming an old hymn under his breath. "Declan, son, you're early," he said with that warm smile that now felt loaded with everything he had never told me. I forced my own smile. "Yeah, thought I'd help with the yard." We worked side by side in silence, the sun warm on our backs, the scent of fresh dirt mixing with the tension I could feel building between us. My hands shook every time I pulled a weed. Finally, after lunch, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pulled the letter from my pocket and set it on the kitchen table between us. "Dad, I found this." The others too. His face went pale. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the tile. "Declan, He stopped, eyes filling with tears. He tried to blink away. "You weren't supposed to see those." That single sentence opened the floodgates. The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours and tore open years of silence. He told me about Alex, the man he had loved in college, how they had planned a future until the church called him home, and guilt won. He admitted he had hidden everything to raise me right, to give me the stable life he never had. I didn't want you to suffer the same pain, he said, voice cracking. But all I heard was betrayal. How could the man I trusted most have lied to me about something so fundamental? And why did his confession make my own hidden feelings roar to life like never before? By the time I left that night, nothing was the same. The drive back to Chicago felt longer than ever. I kept replaying his words, the way his shoulders slumped when he admitted he still thought about Alex sometimes. I pulled over once to catch my breath, staring at the dark fields beside the highway. For the first time in my life, I let myself wonder if the normal I had been chasing was never meant for me at all. The week after that conversation, I threw myself into work to avoid thinking. At the marketing firm downtown, deadlines piled up, but my mind kept drifting to Dad's face when he finally admitted the truth. Justin noticed something was off during our Monday morning meeting. "You look like you haven't slept in days, man," he said, sliding a fresh coffee across the table with that easy smile that always made my stomach flip. I forced a laugh. Family stuff. Nothing major. But it was major. Everything I thought I knew about love and faith and who I was supposed to be had cracked wide open. That afternoon, I sat in my cubicle staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes. Justin stopped by again on his way to the break room. "Hey, if you need to talk, I'm here." No judgment. His hand rested on my shoulder for just a second, and the warmth of it sent a jolt through me I couldn't ignore anymore. I had spent years convincing myself those feelings were just admiration, but after Dad's confession, the lie felt impossible to keep up. I nodded, mumbling thanks, and watched him walk away, wondering what it would feel like to stop pretending. At church that Sunday, I sat in the back pew like always, but the sermon felt different. Dad wasn't preaching this week, but the guest pastor spoke about resisting temptation and staying on the narrow path. Every word landed like a stone in my gut. I kept seeing Dad's tears, hearing his voice say he had chosen the church over the man he loved. Was that what I was doing too? Choosing safety over truth? After service, I drove straight to the park near my apartment instead of going home. I sat on a bench watching families and couples walk by, and for the first time, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to walk hand in hand with someone who made my heart race the way Justin did. The thought both excited and terrified me. Tuesday night, my phone rang. It was Dad. His voice sounded tired. "Son, I know this is a lot. I never wanted you to carry my shame." I gripped the phone tighter. "It's not shame, Dad. It's who you are. And maybe who I am too." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Silence stretched on the line. Then he said quietly, "Come home this weekend. We need to talk more." I agreed, but the fear in my chest grew. What if talking more meant he would ask me to keep living the lie he had chosen? The weekend came too fast. We sat in the living room with the letters spread between us like old ghosts. Dad told me everything. How he met Alex in a literature class, how they fell hard and fast, how the church elders found out and gave him an ultimatum. "I chose you, Declan. When your parents left, I knew I had to be the father you needed. I couldn't let my past touch your future." His voice broke. I felt anger rise, hot and sudden. "So you made me hate a part of myself before I even knew it existed?" He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The hurt in his eyes mirrored my own. That night, I drove around town until the streets blurred. I ended up at the old high school football field where I had pretended to be interested in girls just to fit in. Sitting in the bleachers, I pulled out my phone and stared at Justin's last text. "Still here if you need that talk." My thumb hovered over the reply button. Instead, I typed a message to Sarah, the girl I had been seeing, telling her I needed space. It felt like the first honest thing I had done in years. Back in Chicago on Monday, Justin found me in the break room. "You okay? You disappeared after the meeting." I looked at him, really looked, and the wall I had built for so long cracked a little more. "Not really. But I'm trying to figure it out." He didn't push. He just nodded and said, "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." Those words stayed with me all week, a small light in the storm. By Friday, I realized I couldn't keep running. The secret had forced me to see myself clearly, and the reflection wasn't the straight, church-approved son Dad had raised. It was someone who wanted more than pretending. Someone who wanted to know what it felt like to love without shame. The decision to stop hiding started small, but it was mine, and for the first time it felt like freedom instead of fear. The following weeks blurred into a mix of late nights at work and longer talks with Dad on the phone. He was trying, I could tell. He sent me articles about faith and identity, not to change me, but to show he was reading them too. "I don't have all the answers, son," he admitted one night. "But I don't want you to live with the same regrets." His words gave me courage I didn't know I had. I started noticing things differently at the office. Justin's laugh during team lunches, the way he defended my ideas in meetings, the quiet way he checked if I had eaten when we worked late. Each moment chipped away at the lie I had told myself. One Thursday, after a big presentation, Justin suggested we grab dinner instead of ordering takeout again. My treat. "You look like you could use a real meal." I said yes before I could overthink it. We ended up at a small Italian place downtown, the kind with checkered tablecloths and soft lighting. Conversation flowed easily at first, work stories and weekend plans, but then he asked about my family. I hesitated, then told him about finding the letters. Not everything, just enough. He listened without interrupting, his eyes steady. "That takes guts, Declan. Both to find it and to talk about it." His hand brushed mine when he reached for the bread basket, and neither of us pulled away. The touch lingered like a promise. Walking back to the parking garage, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. Justin stopped under a street lamp. "Whatever you're figuring out, I'm proud of you." The sincerity in his voice cracked something open inside me. I wanted to tell him everything right there, but the words stuck. Instead, I smiled and said good night, heart pounding the whole drive home. That night, I lay awake replaying the evening, wondering if he felt the same pull. The next day at work felt different. Every glance from Justin carried new weight. During lunch, he sat across from me and asked if I wanted to catch a movie that weekend. Nothing fancy, just two guys hanging out. I agreed, telling myself it was casual. But when Saturday came and we met at the theater, sharing popcorn and laughing at the same jokes, it felt like more. On the way out, he bumped my shoulder playfully. "This was fun. We should do it again." I nodded, throat tight. Sunday, I skipped church for the first time in years. Instead, I drove to the lakefront and sat watching the waves. Dad called, worried. I told him I needed space to think. He didn't argue, just said he loved me. The acceptance in his voice surprised me and gave me strength. That evening, I texted Justin a simple thank you for the movie. His reply came fast. "Anytime." Really, the single word carried hope I hadn't let myself feel before. Work the next week brought a new project that paired us together. Late nights turned into conversations that went deeper. He told me about growing up in a small town too, about friends who had come out and faced rejection. "I never wanted that for anyone," he said quietly. I almost told him then, but fear held me back. What if he didn't feel the same? What if the friendship broke? Friday night, we grabbed drinks after work. The bar was crowded, but our table felt like its own world. Halfway through the second round, Justin looked at me across the glasses. "You've been different lately." "In a good way. Like you're finally breathing." I swallowed hard. "Yeah. Turns out breathing is scary when you've held your breath for 25 years. He didn't push for details. He just raised his glass. To breathing. We clinked, and in that moment I knew I was falling. The decision to tell him was forming, but so was the fear of what it might cost. By the end of the month, the secret Dad had kept for decades had become the key that unlocked my own. I still didn't have all the answers, but for the first time I was willing to look for them without shame. Justin was part of that light, and I was starting to believe I deserved it. The misunderstanding started small. Sarah texted me out of the blue, asking if we could meet for coffee. I hadn't officially ended things, just pulled away, so guilt made me say yes. We met at the cafe near the office on a rainy Tuesday. She looked hurt, but tried to smile. "I feel like you're pulling away, Declan." Did I do something? I stumbled through an explanation about needing space, family issues, anything but the truth. She nodded, eyes shiny. I thought we had something real. When we hugged goodbye, Justin happened to walk past the window on his way back from lunch. He saw us, saw the embrace, and his expression changed. The easy smile he usually gave me faltered. Back at the office, he was polite but distant. During our project meeting, he avoided eye contact, and when I asked if he wanted to grab dinner later, he said he had plans. The rejection stung more than I expected. That night, I stared at my phone, debating whether to explain. Instead, I drove to Dad's house unannounced. He opened the door, surprised but welcoming. Over coffee, I told him about Justin, about the almost dates, about the fear that kept me silent. Dad listened, then said something I never expected. Son, I lost Alex because I was afraid. Don't make my mistake. His words hit hard. For the first time, he wasn't preaching. He was giving me permission. The next day, I cornered Justin in the copy room. About the cafe, that was Sarah. We're not together anymore. It was never right. He set the papers down slowly. You don't owe me an explanation, Declan. But his eyes said otherwise. I took a breath. I think I do. Because the reason it was never right is, I feel something for you. Something real. The words hung between us. Justin's face softened. Then he stepped closer. I've been hoping you'd say that. Relief flooded me so fast my knees almost buckled. We didn't kiss there, not in the office, but the way he looked at me promised we would. That weekend we drove to the lake for a hike. The trail was quiet, leaves turning gold. Halfway up, Justin stopped and turned to me. I've liked you since the first team meeting. But I didn't want to push. I laughed, nervous and happy. I was too busy pretending I didn't feel the same. We stood there under the trees, and when he kissed me it felt like coming home. Soft, certain, full of everything we hadn't said. The world didn't end. No lightning struck. Just two guys finally honest with each other. Dad met Justin the following Sunday. I brought him to the house after church, heart pounding. Dad shook his hand, studied him for a long moment, then smiled. Any man who makes my son look this happy is welcome here. The acceptance was tentative but real. We spent the afternoon talking about everything and nothing. Watching Dad laugh with Justin, I felt pieces of my life sliding into place. But life wasn't done testing us. At work, a rumor started that Justin and I were more than colleagues. Whispers in the break room, a few awkward jokes. I wanted to ignore it, but Justin looked worried. I don't want this to hurt your career. I took his hand under the table at lunch. We'll figure it out together. The decision to face the world openly was scary, but it was ours. One evening Sarah called again, voice tight. I saw you with him. I thought you were straight. The hurt in her words made me ache. I apologized for the confusion, for not being honest sooner. She hung up crying. That night, I lay awake beside Justin, his arm around me, and realized every choice had consequences. The misunderstanding with Sarah, the office whispers, Dad's past, all of it had led me here. To a love that felt worth every risk. The betrayal came from the last place I expected. Mike, my best friend since high school, had always been the one I could count on. When the office rumors reached him through a mutual friend, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. Justin was there, and the three of us sat awkwardly at the kitchen table. Mike's face was tight. So it's true? You're gay? The word landed like a slap. I nodded. Yeah. And I'm happy. He shook his head. After everything your dad preached? After all the times we talked about girls? This is because of those letters, isn't it? His voice rose. You're throwing your life away because of some old secret. Justin stayed quiet, letting me handle it, but I could feel his tension. I tried to explain, but Mike stood up. I can't watch you ruin everything. The church, your family, your future. He left without another word. The door closing felt like a chapter ending. Later that night, Justin held me while I processed the hurt. He'll come around, he said softly. But the doubt lingered. Mike had been my anchor through every hard time. Losing his support cracked something deep. Dad heard about the fight from someone at church. He called the next morning. Son, people talk. But your happiness matters more. His words surprised me again. The man who once hid his own love was now defending mine. We met for lunch midweek, and he told me he had started attending a support group for families with LGBTQ children. I'm learning, he said. I don't want to lose you the way I lost Alex. The honesty broke me open. We hugged in the parking lot, years of distance melting away. Work became harder. A few clients raised eyebrows when they saw Justin and me together at events. One even asked if we were business partners in every sense. I kept my head high, but the pressure built. Justin suggested we keep things professional at the office for a while. I don't want them to use this against you. I agreed, but the separation during the day made the evenings sweeter. We cooked dinner together, talked about everything, and slowly built a life that felt ours. The real test came at the church's annual fundraiser. Dad asked me to speak about family and faith. I knew it was his way of showing support, but standing at the podium with Justin in the back row, I felt every eye on me. Halfway through my speech I paused, looked at Dad, then at Justin. Faith taught me to love my neighbor. But it took my father's courage to show me that loving myself was part of that too. The room went quiet. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but Dad stood and started clapping. Others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Afterward, Mike showed up in the parking lot. He looked smaller somehow. I was wrong, he said. Seeing you tonight, I get it. You're still my friend. We hugged, the rift starting to heal. The betrayal had hurt, but it forced me to choose who I wanted in my life. That night, Justin and I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. We made it through the storm, he said, lacing our fingers. I leaned into him, the weight of months lifting. The secret that started everything had led us here, to a love stronger than the fear. But I knew the journey wasn't over. Society still watched, the church still had rules, and my own heart still carried old scars. Yet for the first time I believed we could face whatever came next. Together. The climax hit during the church's Christmas Eve service. Snow fell softly outside the old stone building, lights twinkling on every pew. Dad had asked me to read the final scripture, and Justin sat beside me in the front row, our hands hidden but touching. Halfway through the reading, an elder stood up and interrupted. Pastor Harlan, is it true your son is living in sin with another man? The words echoed through the sanctuary. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I froze at the pulpit, heart hammering. Dad rose slowly, his voice steady. The only sin here is judgment without love. My son has found happiness, and I stand with him. The room erupted. Some people walked out, others stayed, whispering. I stepped down from the pulpit and took Justin's hand openly for the first time in that building. Cameras flashed from phones in the back. The moment felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, but Dad's hand on my shoulder grounded me. You've taught me more about grace than I ever taught you, he said quietly. In that instant, every misunderstanding, every secret, every sacrifice clicked into place. I had almost lost myself trying to be what they wanted. Now I was finally free. After the service, we drove home in silence, snow crunching under the tires. Dad invited us inside for hot chocolate. We sat by the fire, the three of us, and he pulled out an old photo I had never seen. Him and Alex, young and smiling on a beach. He passed away 5 years ago, Dad said softly. But he would have been proud of you, Declan. Tears fell freely. Justin squeezed my hand. The circle felt complete. Months later, spring arrived with new beginnings. Justin and I moved into a small apartment with a view of the lake. Dad visited often, bringing roses from his garden. Mike came for dinner one night, laughing like old times. The world hadn't changed overnight, but we had. I no longer hid. I no longer apologized for loving a man. The journey that started with a hidden letter had led me to the truest version of myself. One warm evening, Justin and I walked the same park where our first real date happened. He stopped under the same street lamp and pulled a small box from his pocket. I don't need the church's blessing. I just need yours. Inside was a simple ring. I said yes before he finished asking. We kissed right there, no fear, no shame, just joy. Looking back, every tear, every argument, every moment of doubt had been worth it. The man who once tried to live normal for the church had discovered that real faith is love without conditions. And real family is the one you choose every day. Do you think hiding who you are for the sake of family expectations and faith can ever lead to real happiness?